like and subscribe. Serious, what celebrity suffered the worst death? Anton Yelchin, who played Pavel Chekhov in 3 of the Star Trek movies in 2009, 2013, 2016. He died being crushed to death. I never want to feel that. Comedian Robert Schimmel survived brutal chemo treatment for cancer, documented in his book Cancer on $5 a Day. Used to make fun of his daughter learning to drive in his act. Killed in a car accident with his daughter behind the wheel. She survived. Probably the death of Judith Barcy from The Land Before Time is the worst I know. Shot in the head by her own father, after being abused all her life. She was 10 years old. There's the story if an is interested. https://n/m Wikipedia org/wiki/Judith_Barcy. Sharon Tate. Everyone else listed on here died horrible, but mostly quick deaths. Tate was literally begging for her life as she was being murdered. Begging for the life of her unborn child. Sharon Tate was nearly full term when she was viciously slain by the Manson family. She begged them to take her as a hostage until her child could be born. She was stabbed 16 times. Isadora Duncan, a famous dancer back in the early 1900s, used to wear long flowing scarves and drive a convertible. In 1927 her scarf got caught in the rear wheel of her car, pulling her from the car and breaking her neck. My grandmother always told us kids to be careful wearing scarves. We thought she was crazy. Marvin Gaye was shot dead by his own dad. Not one of the worst here, but I think of Naya Rivera. She went swimming in a lake with her son. They say that the boat drifted, so she must have had to swim a fair bit to reach the boat, which made her tired. Also talks of how she had a recent sinus infection and suffered from vertigo, and how that may have had an effect. She managed to get her 4-year-old son back onto the boat before drowning. Her son was found alone on the boat hours later. I can only imagine how desperate she must have felt. How terrifying it must be to be drowning, but also knowing that her son is alone on a boat in the middle of a lake. Knowing those fears and anxieties that she would have had while dying makes me feel so bad for her. Drowning is an awful way to go. The kids and actor who died filming that Twilight Zone film. The scene where the helicopter flew a bit too low and ended up slicing them all up and killing them. Swedish jazz legend Monica Zetterlund died when her apartment caught fire. She was unable to get out since she was in a wheelchair due to severe problems with scoliosis. Dominique Dunn, the older sister from the Poltergeist, was strangled to death by her abusive ex, and he only served 3 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter. Bob Crane of Hogan's Heroes fame was found bludgeoned to death with a tripod. He was hit so hard that blood was strewn across the walls and the ceiling. He also had an electrical cord wrapped around his neck that may have had some strangulation involved. Manute Bol, NBA player, died of a disease, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, where your skin slowly sloughs off your body. Horrifying. The guitarist from Anal fell off an escalator and broke his neck. A few hockey players have had pretty horrific deaths. Hall of Famer Terry Sawchuk, https://n Wikipedia org/wiki/Terry_Sawchuk is the first that comes to mind. He was drunk and horsing around with his roommate when he somehow fell over his roommate's knee and got severe internal injuries. Had to have his gallbladder removed, had multiple operations on his bleeding liver, before dying of a pulmonary embolism all over the course of a couple months. He was 40. Howie Morans, https://n Wikipedia org/wiki/HOWIE_MORENZ-FINAL_GAME_AND_DEATH is another. Snapped his leg in a game and was hospitalized. Over time he became depressed. He couldn't play as he was totally bedridden. Over time, he felt more and more lonely, and suffered a nervous breakdown according to team doctors. He tried to get up to use the bathroom, then died of a blood clot from his broken leg. He was 34. Edit. Thought of another one. Alexander Galimov. He was a part of the Yaroslav Lokomotiv plane crash that killed the whole team. Galimov was the only one to survive the initial crash, apart from the lone survivor. I briefly tried to find the article, but I am on mobile, but apparently he was found attempting to get out of the wreckage. The person that found him, paramedic I think, said he kept trying to take his sweater off, but as he got closer he realized he was peeling off skin and muscle tissue. Galimov had third degree, or worse, burns on over 80% of his body, and was put in a medically induced coma where he later died. He was only his 26. I'll try to link the article when I get a second. Comedian Tommy Cooper died of a heart attack while on stage, and everyone laughed at him as he died, thinking it was part of the show. You can see the video online. Christina Grimmie was shot and killed at her own meet and greet. Natalie Wood. She was terrified of water, drowned in the middle of the night under suspicious circumstances. Annette Funicello. Manuscript left her unable to even feed herself, walk, talk. Prisoner of her own body. Also, Christopher Reeves. Totally paralyzed, incredible human being. Too much suffering. Alan Turing. Rewarded with chemical castration and eventual suicide for cracking the Enigma code and laying the blueprint for modern computers. Cruel way to go. I don't know if it's the worst, but I gotta go with Brandon Lee's accidental death during the filming of The Crow. Surprised no one has mentioned Kirsty MacColl, of Fairy Tale of New York. Died after being decapitated by a speedboat. Rebecca Schiffer. She was a TV actress who had a stalker. He pretended to be a courier delivering a script. He knocked on her door, and when she opened it, grabbed her and shot her in the heart. She died an agonizing death. Not the worst by far, but still a way to die. Actor William Holden bled to death in his apartment in Santa Monica after lacerating his forehead from slipping on a rug while intoxicated and hitting a bedside table. That's no fun. Montgomery Clift 1920 to 1966. Famous acting teacher Robert Lewis once said that Clift's death was the longest suicide in theater history. 10 years prior to his death he was in a horrific car accident that disfigured his face. He had problems before the accident, but after that everything got worse. His drinking and drug use increased, and one by one his closest friends left him. During the last year of his life he had to have a live-in nurse help take care of him. He was only 45 when he died. A lot of people don't know that it was Elizabeth Taylor who saved him, who kept him alive by pulling his teeth out of his busted mouth so he could breathe, all while in her evening gown. She also threatened any photographers who tried to take photos. She was a total badass. Jane Mansfield. Have you ever noticed that tractor trailers have big metal bars on the very bottom at the back of the trailer? It's not just a step to get up into the trailer, it's to stop cars from crashing into it. Jane Mansfield died when her car crashed into the rear of a tractor trailer at high speed. Without the bars, the car slid right underneath the trailer. Unfortunately, trailers are at the perfect height to perfectly shear off the entire top of a car. Mansfield wasn't decapitated, but died pretty much instantly by all accounts. I'd say Selena Quintanilla. She got shot and killed by an obsessive orphan. She was at the peak of her career, where she won a Grammy, performed at the Astrodome Stadium in Texas, working on an English crossover album, and had recently removed her IUD to attempt getting pregnant. That one bullet to her back ended her life and affected millions who listened to Tejano music. Worse, it wasn't some obsessive fan. It was a friend and manager of her fashion line who obsessed over her, and whom she trusted regardless of warnings from her family. She was caught embezzling from Selena's fans by Selena's father. She was murdered over $30K. Shot in the shoulder, and bled out as she ran for help. Isadora Duncan was a famous dancer in the 20s. She liked to ride in open motor cars with her long flowing scarves around her neck. One of her scarves got caught up in the wheel of her Mortoraro vertical bar. Some more fun facts regarding her death. She got into the car, threw back her long scarf, and said, "Farewell friends, I'm off to glory," stepped on the gas, and snapped her head right back as the scarf became entangled around the wire rims of her 1920s car. Her funeral was memorable too. The coffin was slid into the crematorium oven, but the closing mechanism got stuck. Her torso started to rise due to the intense heat, and the last thing they witnessed before the doors finally slammed shut was her famously red long hair bursting into flames. Now that's an exit. Kirsty MacColl. She was swimming with her children and a power boat came towards her son. She managed to push him out the way. She was not so lucky. What makes it worse is the man who killed her paid 1,034 pesos to get out of jail. Most of the ones listed here are violent and tragic deaths of young people, but the one that probably affected me the most was Roger Ebert. A slow death from cancer that left him without his jaw and tongue. He survived for several years unable to eat or talk, but continued writing, and then his cancer came back, and he was gone in months. Losing Siskel a decade earlier was terrible, but he went relatively quickly from brain cancer, although way too young. Phil Hartman, killed by his own wife who he'd been married to for 10 years. Anton Yelchin, 27. Chekhov from Star Trek movie, trapped between SUV rolling downhill and a gate. There was a recall on the Jeep for that. Dominique Dunn, strangled by her ex in her driveway. I'm hearing Paul Walker and others, but honestly, I think Judith Barcy got it unfairly. She was still a child when she became successful. Her father then turned demanding and abusive. He eventually shot her in the head while she slept. She was 10. Richie Valens, 17 years old, sang La Bamba, had a fear of flying, and then died in a plane crash. https://www.reddit.com/r/today I learned /comment/71 ask 0 /to_ocra_pioneer_Richie_Valens_had_fear_of/. Chris Farley comes to mind. He was struggling with drug addiction, and on the night he died, he was on the 4th day of massive bender. His final morning he hired a call girl to come to his apartment. Allegedly she witnessed him struggling to breathe, and he said, "Don't leave me." She took his watch, took some photos of him collapsed on the floor, wrote a note, and left. His brother found his body. He could have just called 911 and left the door open. ABBA's drummer Ola Brunkert died when he fell through a glass door and cut his throat open. He lived long enough to try and wrap a towel around his neck and stumble into the garden. Also the Dick Morrow and the kids that John Landis killed by dropping a helicopter on them. Steve Irwin's death sounds pretty painful to be. Lane Stalliovalis in chains was pretty grim. He spent months in almost total solitude slowly killing himself with drugs, only seeing his dealer, and the odd visit from Jerry Cantrell. Must have been a very lonely dark place for such a long period of time. Princess Diana, being chased at high speed by paparazzi and her driver was drunk. Then when they did crash, the paparazzi took photos of her dying. Answering my own question, I think Sharon Tate has to be up there. On a totally different note, I'm going to add Owen Hart. You've been visited by the ghost of a very important man. Pay your respects by liking and subscribing, and he'll grant you 3 weeks of good luck. 3 weeks of